Welcome everyone. My name is Sean, and first and foremost, I just hope that everybody out there in the audience had an absolutely wonderful Thanksgiving. I'm a huge fan of the holiday. If you guys saw my community tab, this is the turkey that I made. Yes, I butterballed it. Yes, I bacon armored it. Yes, it came out absolutely delicious, and I hope from me and mine to you and yours that your Thanksgiving was absolutely fantastic, because truly it is one of the great American holidays, and the only conflict that should ever be produced for Thanksgiving is not arguing around the dinner table about politics. It's about whether or not we should invade Canada, conquer them, make them have Thanksgiving in November like they should, instead of that October nonsense that they try to produce. However, unfortunately, there was yet another conflict this Thanksgiving, and it actually happened in New York City. It happened in Queens in particular, and this was because it appears that migrants were prioritized over NYCHA residents, which are the people who live in New York City subsidized housing, the poorest among New Yorkers, and this tension grew into an absolute mess, and it didn't need to be this way. Now, we're going to talk about this, but before we do, I want to say thank you to all of you who signed up over on actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And thank you to the podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform.
Thousands of Thanksgiving meals are being prepared for asylum seekers through NYC Health and Hospitals.
As CBS 2's Shosh Bedrosian reports from Long Island City, the meals include a culturally inclusive menu.
So the first thing that I want to say right off the bat, because I think it's incredibly important for those of you out there in the audience to understand this, is that I don't hate these people. I don't hate these migrants or anything like that, because if you think about it from their perspective, America is amazing. They want to come to the United States of America, and when they come to the United States of America, they get treated better by our institutions than our own citizens, so it makes sense for these people to want to come here, and I have nothing negative to say about them being fed Thanksgiving meals, because people need to eat, and that is a part of the holiday tradition. However, with that being understood, that there's no hatred for these individual people, and I understand that the incentive structure laid out actually entices people to come here and enjoy the bounty of the United States of America, my issue, and I believe your anger, should be aimed at the politicians that enable this behavior and go out of their way and seemingly bend over backwards to prioritize these people over your everyday citizens. Now, in this particular story, I believe 27,000 migrants were fed by the various organizations that are covered in this segment. There's a Pix 11 story where it's 1,400 migrants, and all of that on its own in isolation would be fine and good. But the thing is, apparently a bunch of poor New Yorkers, homeless New Yorkers, American citizens, residents of New York that are here legally, didn't get fed. They had to struggle in order to get Thanksgiving meals. And I think a sensible country, a sensible city, a sensible state prioritizes its own citizens, its own residents, over new arrivals. However, that does not appear to be what has happened.
To feed the migrants, it felt like a dream come true to provide better, nutritious, and culturally relevant meals.
From freshly cooked to packaged up, these Thanksgiving meals have meaning to Edward Song.
This tradition might not be something that's familiar with a lot of our migrants today.
Song, the CEO of Commissary, says it's an opportunity to welcome migrants to American culture.
Honor both this very old American tradition, but also provide a meal that was nostalgic for our population.
Now again, on its own, this very wholesome and kind of nice. You end up in a situation where you have people that are unfamiliar with a more traditional Thanksgiving cuisine, so you're trying to tailor the menu to the people that you're serving, and for me, it's actually quite sweet when I think about the fact that this was the first Thanksgiving that me and my fiance ended up throwing for family and friends and whatnot, and she brought things that I don't typically eat on Thanksgiving. I made things that she's not particularly used to, and it was all a good time and very nice and very sweet. But the thing is, if you're going to set up an organization, or you're going to use organizational resources to feed people in New York City Thanksgiving, and then go out of your way to take the extra step to tailor the meals to those people, it gets really sad and unfortunate when your average everyday New Yorkers that have fallen on hard times, that are American citizens, feel cut out of this process where they have to fight for the scraps while you're not only feeding these migrants, who a lot of them, let's be honest, enter this country illegally, they're claiming asylum fraudulently, are getting first priority, and not only that, they're getting special treatment as compared to what your average everyday New Yorker that fell on hard times is getting.
His kitchen has partnered with New York City Health and hospitals to make thousands of Thanksgiving meals.
This is our boneless chicken thigh.
With hopes of bringing a sense of comfort or familiar tastes and foods.
We lay them out, so we season with like adobo.
To migrants in new, unfamiliar locations.
Instead of turkey, we did baby chicken leg, for example, with the brown gravy, just because chicken is more familiar to them.
I mean, there you have it right here, where people are saying, well, look, because they're not familiar with turkey, even though we typically have turkey on Thanksgiving, we did a baby chicken leg for them because that's something that caters more towards their palates. You know, we want to make sure we do right by the migrants because the migrants are here and, you know, they're falling on hard times and we're spending a lot of money on them. Why not spend a little bit more? And why not, again, go out of our way, bend over backwards in order to satisfy their particular palates rather than do a traditional Thanksgiving, rather than serve the traditionally poor people in the city of New York. Let's go out of our way to help them. Now, I want to flip the story and talk about the contrast to this. I want to talk about people that are in our housing system that require government benefits in order to survive, people that might be elderly, but people who are American citizens who rely on these institutions and don't have this magic super citizenship that gets granted to you when apparently you claim asylum fraudulently because you're an actual economic migrant.
Why do we have to take the butt of everything? Okay, this community here is already suffering.
The residents living in NYCHA's Queensbridge houses look forward to the mobile food pantries that show up weekly. But over the past year, they have witnessed 8,000 migrants move into their neighborhood, and they have also noticed the migrants are also starting to take their stuff.
Now look, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of this because it either happens through charity, through the church, or through your local municipality, where during Thanksgiving or during any holiday time, trucks show up around poor areas, or there's like an area that you would go to, a pantry or whatever, and they give out food, basically no questions asked, to the people that show up and claim that they are in need. However, in this particular area, again, which is a NYCHA housing complex in Queens, New York, they've had a lot of migrants move in. They are being housed in what should be housing for poor New Yorkers, what is allocated for poor New Yorkers. And not only are they there, not only are they living on the taxpayer dime, but they're also showing up first and cutting off some of these elderly people. And by the way, you notice they said they line up at 10:30 because sometimes the line gets a little bit out of hand.
They was first online for the turkeys this morning. If they tell you to be there at 11 o'clock, you get there like 10:30, 10:45, but they already out there. The line is from over there to over here.
Free food giveaways, especially during the holidays, have become a source of tension between longtime New Yorkers struggling to get by and newly arrived migrants who are using the system to survive.
But by the time that they show up to get on the line is around the block. And for those of you who are unaware, leading into Thanksgiving, it was a little bit more chilly than we had experienced in November. So you're waiting in the cold in order to get a turkey so that you, the poor resident of New York, can have food for your family's Thanksgiving. And after hours on the line, guess what? There's not enough to go around. The migrants got first dibs, and you and your family, who might have been counting on that, who might count on that each and every year, you're out of luck.
A month ago, one altercation got so heated between a resident and a migrant, someone ended up in the hospital.
We would never turn anyone away for a meal, but there simply just is not enough for both NYCHA residents and the migrant shelter residents.
So they have this councilwoman, Juan, Democrat from Queens, and she says, look, we're not going to turn anybody away for a meal, but there's not enough for the NYCHA, which is the New York Public Housing people, and the migrants. Now, of course, she prioritizes the migrants over the actual citizens of this particular area, and that is where the tensions get out of control. And as you saw, there was an issue where there was an actual fight that led to somebody going to the hospital online for food. So these issues are building up in the city of New York, and you could see residents, even people in city council that are prioritizing the migrants over the residents, are getting angry, they're getting frustrated, and this should not be the way that things are. Again, the idea that if you come to this country illegally, if you falsely claim asylum, that you get priority over your average everyday citizen while homeless people are being booted from shelters while they're on the streets is absolutely horrible in every possible way. Now, granted, New York City and New York State created this problem by having all of these magnets that draw these migrants here. We've discussed on this channel that Greg Abbott sending people to New York City as a political statement is not the large source or a huge portion of the migrants that are actually here. Most of them are actually requesting to come to places like New York and Chicago due to the fact that New York has a right to housing or a right to shelter where you can ask a city official for shelter and they have to put you up, and due to the fact in Chicago that they don't check immigration status when handing out benefits. So that is what's drawing these people here, and now we're seeing what happens when you put these systems to the stress test, and it turns out that average everyday New Yorkers that are on hard times are the ones who get the short end of the stick.
Councilmember Julie Juan says she alerted the mayor to the growing tension in her community and was able to get $50,000 to increase the number of hot meals served inside NYCHA's. But she's concerned the mayor's new budget cuts will only put further stress on a community already living in scarcity.
People are going hungry right now. People are frustrated with not having enough to eat, not having heat and hot water in their shelters or in their houses in NYCHA. And people want to make sure that they just have their basic needs met, like any human would anywhere.
So, of course, this Democratic representative is blaming the budget cuts. The problem is that they spend all this money and then the budget is running in deficit, so they have to cut it in order to balance it because, you know, a city like New York can't actually print money like the federal government. You can't borrow money from China like the federal government. And according to her, the only issue is the fact that, oh, they're cutting the funding and all these resources. It's creating problems for the residents of New York City, and that's where the tension is coming from. But the thing is, there was enough food, more or less, to go around. There was enough resources to cover the basic needs of people in poverty. Now, I'm not saying that they were living in luxury. I'm not saying that there weren't problems, waste, and all of these issues in our public housing system. But the fact of the matter is, it was designed for poor New Yorkers, and the idea that they have to bear the brunt of the migrant crisis makes no sense. But the thing is, this is what people voted for on a national level when they voted for Joe Biden, who promised to have a lax, soft on immigration kind of policy, and now we're seeing the effects. 140,000 people who basically cannot do for themselves in New York City have arrived, and with no help from the federal government, it is up to the state and the city government in order to cover these people. And by the way, Eric Adams, who has spoken out against the Biden administration, who has actually proposed changes, is now finding himself under federal investigation, his administration, which by the way is both probably true because he was a borough president, and as I talked about, these Brooklyn borough presidents, all these borough presidents are shady positions that definitely lend themselves to corruption. But to me, it seems rather interesting that Bill de Blasio didn't get a real federal investigation launched against him, even though his wife misplaced $1 billion in the Thrive New York program. But all of a sudden, after Eric Adams has become outspoken on the immigration issue, he's getting the FBI and all these different organizations raiding them. It could be a coincidence. I'm not trying to lend myself to conspiracy, but it seems rather interesting that we had obvious corruption under the de Blasio administration in many, many instances, but in this particular situation, it's like, well, it's probably corrupt. Eric Adams probably has those issues, but now the hand of the federal government has come down upon him because he spoke out against the federal government. So yeah, this is the issue that a lot of New Yorkers were dealing with, a lot of New Yorkers in poverty were dealing with, fighting for resources against migrants, and I understand their frustration, I understand the fact that they're upset, and I get why this is going down. Now, I will let you guys out there in the audience tell me what you guys think about this, and as usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about migrants and residents fighting for resources. Till next time.